Give you a sense now of where's the business here? Where's this hosting thing I talked about? So, so here you have all these little smiley guys are potential people who might want to join a community. You can just imagine whatever kind of community. We'll say a socializing, like a MySpace or whatever. Well, any virtual community needs a host. Why do they need a host? Because the community can't exist without a web platform, or those Web 2.0 tools. Remember, this is not the community in your neighborhood. This is all on the web. So somebody has to create the platform. So you have a host who creates a platform. Okay? And looking forward, this is where the business models are built around, doing this hosting. So the host creates a platform, and there's two key parts to the platform. One is there's certain technical features to it. So certain platforms will allow you to talk with each other openly, like in these blogs. Okay? Other platforms, like, say, the Wikipedia, the online encyclopedia, allow you to go into a wiki document and everybody can add to an article and change it. But that's a different kind of technical feature than the threaded conversation. So there's different just technical things that you can build into that web platform, which is basically access to a website or a web portal. But that's not the end of the story. The host also typically creates some policies and rules for how you can use that. So when I talk about web platform after this, I'm really talking about not only the technical features of it, but also these policies and rules. And these can make a big difference. There was a predecessor to the Wikipedia. Everybody pretty well know Wikipedia by now?
Yeah.
Okay. Right now it's over 5 million articles, 100 languages. It's really amazing. But before Jimmy Wales started the Wikipedia, he started something called the Newpedia. This goes back, I think, to about year 2000. And his idea was to create an online encyclopedia that people could contribute to. But back then, either they didn't have wikis or he didn't think about it. So back then, you had to submit your article to Jimmy Wales, and he had some people who would look at it. And they would decide, well, we like this one, we don't like this one, we'll put it in, we don't put it in. Well, after 2 years, they had 12 articles. So he thought, this is not working. So there's a good example of where the technical features of the wiki made a huge difference, because now it opened up the door to many people to easily come in and contribute. Whereas the technical feature was a problem because you didn't have the wiki, but it was really also the rule. See, that's a key thing, because back then his rule was, nah, I'm not going to let your article in here unless my experts review it and approve it. See, that's a big difference. Now, you can even do that with the Wikipedia now. So it doesn't, just because it's a wiki doesn't mean, although wikis tend to be open, but what I'm saying is that type of rule is very important too. So it's not just the technical features, it's also the rules that the host applies to how the platform can be used. All right, so once the host has set up the platform, there's pretty much two kinds of communities. There's one kind where you really need a leader. And that's who this little big guy is, and I don't know where he came from. He came from somewhere. And this is almost always a member of the community. It's somebody that is from the community and is like typically doing something that they want. They wanted to, like Linux, or Linux, was started by Linus Torvalds, who was a computer scientist, a student who needed a certain type of software. So he needed it. He put out onto the web, this is back in 1991, a request for other people who could maybe help him. And things kind of rolled from there. And he continues to be the leader. He was the founder, and he's also the leader even to this day. So there is kind of a norm in the open source software anyway, and I won't get into that. But so for some types of communities, like open source software communities, you have a leader who really gets the thing going. And that leader is part of the community, encourages people, and may kind of get involved as a host as well, but typically is separate. Okay, but the point I want to make is the leader really must come from the community. So if you're a hosting business, Typically, it's hard for you to be that. You usually aren't. And you got to realize there's kind of an arm's length there.
David, I'd like to make add a comment on the leader part.
Yeah.
And Linus Torvalds was not the first. The first was Richard Stallman, who started this GNU project. And he was a real strong, he had a very strong ego. And he was very, very expert, but people really didn't like him. And Torvalds had a different personality. He was much more open. So Richard Stallman was kind of like this religious leader, and he was, if you didn't like the way he did it, too bad. And you're either with him or you're against him. And Torvalds, and then the problem was that Stallman got, what do they call it, carpal tunnel, some problem, and he couldn't program anymore. So he had the GNU system almost finished, except for what's called the kernel. And the kernel is this essential part of the operating system. And Stallman intended to do it, but he couldn't because he was injured. And so it languished for probably a year and a half. And Torvalds picked it up and filled in this gap for one particular machine. I think it was the AT, or the IBM TC AT or something like that. And then he put it on the web. He said, this is my version. And the title of the email, which has been reproduced many times, is Just for Fun. And he did it just as he was a graduate student. He put it out there. He did it for his own, because he didn't want to walk all the way to the computer center. That was it was cold in Finland. He didn't want to walk all the way. He did this and put it out, and then he was very, very open to modifications and changes. So personality was another very important factor in the success. That took off in a way that probably would not have had Stallman not had his injury.
Right. And that's a great example, and I'll talk a little bit about how you manage these. I'm going to present it more from the management, from the business side, but the business manager here must be very aware that these communities are special animals. They do have very strong norms at times, and these leaders here are critical people. So, as Professor Lee says, the wrong kind of leader can kill off a community. So, but now not all communities have a leader. So, in some cases, you have a host, you have a leader, and then individuals start coming in from the potential. This is kind of those that might get involved. They start getting involved, but you can see it's all on the platform. So all this interaction happens on the platform. So that's the case where you have a leader. In other cases, for example, MySpace communities. You can argue whether they have leaders or not. I mean, typically the host is the MySpace company who created that platform, had the different profiles for individuals, and people began to use it, and they sort of formed many communities on the platform. But in that case, there really wasn't a single leader like a Linus Torvalds who said, here we go, let's create social networking a community. So you've got a couple of variations of it, but depending on the kind of community you're dealing with and the kind of hosting model, you very well might have to deal with a leader. Now, the host also will provide certain kinds of administrative services. For example, with the Wikipedia, the host of the Wikipedia, while they've tried, their policies are very much hands-off. So Jimmy Wales, as the founder of the Wikipedia itself, wants to keep it open and allow input. But over the years, he's come to realize that there's a lot of areas where he does have to step in, and he has people who can step in. Especially around political, when it's around time for an election. The article about George Bush was just incredible. I mean, people were just back and forth, and it became counterproductive. So those are kind of abusive behaviors and that type of thing. So, because again, these are open. So there are certain kinds of services that need to be applied, but as I'll point out later, you can't overdo this. If you overdo this, you can kill off the whole the whole community. All right? But it is very important, because if not, then the community can kind of dissolve into chaos, and now you've lost it from that standpoint. Because remember, community members are doing it because they want to. And if it's hard to do, if it's a pain in the neck, if it's a problem, they won't do it. They won't come back. So you've got to be aware of that. In that respect, it's like a market. So now I'm going to talk more about the actual business opportunities